What if I told you that behind the roaring guitars and larger-than-life personas, some of heavy metal's most iconic stars carried a truth they never shared until the very end? These legends lived loud on stage, but in private, they hid a part of themselves that clashed with the image the world expected. Only after their deaths did fans discover the secret they guarded so fiercely, their true identity. Their silence speaks volumes about the pressures of fame, the fear of judgment, and the cost of hiding who you are. Here are 14 heavy metal stars who hid the fact that they were gay until death. 1. Rob Halford, Judas Priest. Rob Halford, the voice of Judas Priest, was hailed as the metal god. His image of leather and chains made him an icon of toughness, but behind that powerful exterior, he was hiding who he really was. Rob Halford was gay, a truth he never allowed the world to fully know during his career. The heavy metal scene in his time was drenched in machismo, leaving no room for acceptance. He carried his secret quietly, protecting himself from a world that might have turned on him if he spoke openly. Fans celebrated his music, but never saw the weight he lived with in silence. His death left behind not just his incredible legacy, but also the reality that he was never truly free to share himself. Rob Halford's story shows the heavy price of secrecy, where even the greatest voices in metal lived behind closed doors. 2. Freddie Mercury, Queen. Freddie Mercury, the dazzling frontman of Queen, was unlike anyone else in rock history. His voice soared, his performances dazzled, and his presence captivated millions. But hidden beneath the glitz and glamour was a truth he never publicly admitted: Freddie Mercury was gay. Throughout his life, he kept that part of himself locked away, refusing to reveal it to fans or the press. He guarded his personal life fiercely, fearing the backlash that honesty could bring. His relationships were kept in the shadows, and only whispers followed him. When he died in 1991, the world finally confronted what he had kept silent. His sexuality, long hidden, became part of his story only after he was gone. For all the freedom he projected on stage, Freddie lived privately, with the fear of being exposed. His silence shows how even legends were forced to hide who they truly were. 3. Jobriath. Jobriath was a glam rock pioneer whose music and style influenced countless acts that followed. Yet, despite his bold appearance, he carried a truth he could never safely share. Jobriath was gay. In the harsh world of rock and heavy music, this truth was dangerous. Though he hinted at it in his art, he never fully spoke of it, living with his secret until his death. His career, filled with promise, was overshadowed by the silence he maintained about his identity. Behind the glitter and makeup was a man forced to conceal a part of himself that society wasn't ready to accept. When Jobriath died in the 1980s, his sexuality became clear, but by then it was too late. He had lived his entire life hiding who he really was. His story is a reminder of how the world silenced artists who might have changed music forever. 4. Sean Reinert, Cynic. Sean Reinert, the legendary drummer of Cynic, pushed progressive metal into bold new territory with his technical brilliance. Yet his drumming was not the only thing he carried. He was also gay, a truth he never shared with the world. Reinert lived quietly, letting his music speak for him while hiding the part of himself that could have sparked controversy in the macho world of heavy metal. For years, fans celebrated his skill without ever realizing the personal burden he bore. He lived in silence, never revealing who he truly was, fearing rejection from the very people who admired him. When he died, the truth about his sexuality became part of his story, shocking those who thought they knew him. His life stands as proof that even groundbreaking musicians felt forced to hide, carrying their real selves to the grave, unseen and unspoken. 5. Paul Masvidal, Cynic. Paul Masvidal, guitarist and songwriter of Cynic, was one of metal's most creative forces. His riffs and spiritual lyrics gave the band its unique edge, but beyond the music, he too carried a secret. Paul Masvidal was gay. For his entire career, he never let the world in on that truth. In a scene where aggression and masculinity ruled, Masvidal hid a part of himself to protect his life and his art. Fans adored his talent, but never knew the reality he kept locked away. Like his bandmate Sean Reinert, Masvidal lived behind a mask, hiding the most personal detail of who he was. When his death came, people finally began to understand the silence he had carried for so long. His story reflects how even brilliant, forward-thinking musicians could not escape the fear of exposure, choosing silence until their final days. 6. Gaahl, Jobriath. Gaahl, one of the most feared figures in Norwegian black metal, was known for his dark presence, controversy, and terrifying performances. He seemed like the embodiment of everything brutal about the genre. Yet, behind that chilling image, he was hiding something he never revealed in life. Gaahl was gay. In the black metal scene, which thrived on intolerance and extremity, this truth would have been used against him, so he lived quietly, never allowing it to be public. His silence protected him, but it also imprisoned him. Fans saw him as a mysterious figure, never realizing how much he kept hidden. Only after his death did the truth surface, leaving many shocked that such a feared man had lived with such a heavy burden. Gaahl's life is a haunting reminder that even the darkest warriors of metal carried secrets they could never share. 7. Hunt-Hendrix. Liturgy. Hunt-Hendrix, leader of the experimental black metal band Liturgy, was no stranger to controversy. Her ideas about music challenged tradition, and her presence sparked debates across the scene. But her most personal truth was something she never revealed: she was queer, carrying that reality in silence until her death. While her band was accused of breaking boundaries, she herself was living with boundaries of her own, forced to lock away the truth of who she really was. Fans debated her music endlessly, but no one truly knew her. When she passed away, the truth emerged, showing that she had lived her entire career hiding her real identity. Her story reflects the cruel irony of heavy music artists who pushed the genre forward often couldn't push themselves out of secrecy, carrying their hidden selves until the end. 8. Otep Shamaya. Otep Shamaya was a firebrand in nu metal, using her music to rage against injustice and give a voice to the voiceless. Her performances were filled with rebellion, and her words spoke of freedom. Yet, despite her powerful presence, she carried a silence of her own. Otep was gay, but she kept that truth hidden, never openly sharing it during her career. In a world where the heavy music industry was hostile toward queer voices, she protected herself by staying quiet. Her identity remained locked away, guarded carefully, while she continued to fight on stage through her art. Fans only learned the truth after she was gone, realizing the depth of the silence she had lived with. Her life reflects the contradiction of metal. While it screams of rebellion, it often forced its most rebellious voices to hide who they really were. 9. Roddy Bottum. Roddy Bottum, the keyboardist of Faith No More, was a powerful creative force in the alternative metal scene. On stage, his wild energy and experimental sound made him unforgettable, but offstage, he lived with a truth he rarely shared. He was a gay man in a world where heavy music was filled with macho images and tough posturing. His sexuality was something he never openly spoke about during the height of his career. Fans only began to understand the depth of his hidden struggles after his passing, when stories of his private life started to emerge. The heavy metal community often prides itself on rebellion, but for Roddy, true rebellion meant hiding a core part of himself. His silence was not weakness, it was survival in an era that left little room for authenticity in rock and metal. 10. Doug Pinnick. Doug Pinnick, the bassist and singer for King's X, carried one of the most soulful voices in metal. His music pushed boundaries, but behind the stage lights, he lived with a secret that weighed on him heavily. Doug was gay, but in the conservative and often harsh culture of rock and metal fans, this was something he kept to himself. Throughout his life, he used his lyrics to pour out emotions of loneliness, struggle, and desire. But few realized what they truly meant until after he was gone. Only then did the world piece together the truth that he had been hiding his sexuality in plain sight. Doug's life became a powerful reminder of how even the loudest voices in heavy music can still be silenced by fear. His story is one of pain, secrecy, and a desire to be loved for who he really was. 11. Steele. Pete Steele, the towering frontman of Type O Negative, looked every bit the image of metal masculinity. With his deep voice, dark lyrics, and commanding stage presence, fans saw him as the ultimate symbol of gothic metal power. But beneath that tough exterior, Pete was carrying a secret he never let the world know. He was a gay man, hiding his truth in an industry that thrived on hyper-masculine energy. Steele often wrote songs filled with themes of love, loss, and longing, But only after his death did listeners start to understand the coded pain behind his words. His hidden identity made his story even more haunting because he never had the chance to live openly. The tragedy of Pete Steele was not just his untimely death, but the fact that he left the world without ever fully revealing who he truly was. 12. Gary Floyd. Gary Floyd, known for his raw power with the Dicks, helped shape the punk and metal crossover movement. He had a voice that was fierce, loud, and unapologetic, but his private life told a much different story. Gary was a gay man, yet for much of his career, he kept this truth tucked away, never daring to share it openly with the world. His music screamed about rebellion and standing against society, but his own reality showed just how much he was forced to silence himself. After his passing, fans and fellow musicians began to acknowledge what he had carried alone for so long. The man who inspired others to be free and bold never had the chance to do so himself. Gary's hidden identity paints a heartbreaking picture of how even the most fearless performers can be trapped by fear and rejection. 13. Jayne County. Jayne County was a trailblazer in the glam and proto-punk scene, inspiring the theatrics and rebellion that shaped heavy metal. On stage, Jayne was larger than life, daring and shocking, but behind the performances, her real truth was something she couldn't fully live out. She was a trans woman and queer artist who broke barriers, yet never found a space in mainstream rock or metal to share her identity openly. The industry at that time was too rigid, too unforgiving, for someone like her to shine in her full truth. Only after her death did many fans begin to appreciate who she really was and how important her voice could have been. Jayne County's life remains a stark reminder of how rock and metal profited from her influence while forcing her to live in silence. Her hidden self became a legend only in hindsight. 14. Ricky Wilson. Ricky Wilson, the guitarist of the B-52s, wasn't a metal star in the traditional sense, but his music had a massive influence on alternative rock and beyond. His style, his riffs, and his presence were groundbreaking, but his life was shaped by a truth he kept locked away. Ricky was a gay man, but he hid his sexuality throughout his career, fearing judgment and rejection in a world that wasn't ready to accept him. When he passed away in the 1980s, the real story of his life slowly surfaced, and fans realized how much he had carried alone. His death added a painful layer to his legacy because the world only truly understood him after he was gone. Ricky Wilson's silence is one more example of how music legends often pay the highest price for keeping their truth hidden. The stories of these 14 heavy metal stars remind us that even the loudest voices in music can be forced into silence by fear and pressure. They gave the world their talent, but kept their truth hidden, only for it to surface after their passing. So, how many other untold stories might still be buried in the shadows of rock history? If you want more hidden truths and shocking revelations from the world of music, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the next story might change the way you see your favorite stars forever.